Welcome to episode 25 of Brass Unpacked, a legendary figure of antiquity, a feared strategist, and the ultimate nightmare of Rome. Hannibal Barca left his mark on history more than 2 centuries before the birth of Christ. Even today, he is regarded as one of the greatest military tacticians of all time. In 2007, Swiss composer Mario Bürki chose to bring this extraordinary destiny to life through music. His work traces the entire journey of Hannibal's life, from his birth in Carthage, the great city of the ancient world located near present-day Tunis, to his forced exile, hunted relentlessly by the power of Rome. The piece opens with the grandeur of Carthage, a majestic and powerful city at the height of its influence. It is here that Hannibal Barca grows up, shaped from an early age by the military legacy of his father, Hamilcar Barca. Commander of the Carthaginian armies, Hamilcar rose to prominence during the First Punic War, relentlessly challenging the might of Rome. Around 237 BC, as soon as he was old enough to fight, Hannibal Barca joined his father's forces in Iberian Peninsula, stepping onto the battlefield for the very first time. The Carthaginians then began to extend their control over Iberian Peninsula, a land still divided among peoples with loosely unified structures. This conquest was no coincidence. It was driven by a dual ambition. First, to replenish the coffers of Carthage, drained and deeply indebted after earlier defeats. But above all, to quietly prepare the long-awaited revenge against Rome, gathering strength in the shadows before striking back. After the death of his father, Hannibal took full control of his own destiny. In Iberian Peninsula, he methodically secured the conquered territories, strengthened Carthaginian authority, and asserted his leadership over the troops, emerging as a commander in his own right. By the end of 218 BC, the moment of confrontation had arrived. Hannibal rallied his forces and set in motion what would become the Second Punic War. Leaving Iberian Peninsula at the head of his army, he crossed the Pyrenees, then pressed relentlessly onward, marching straight toward the towering barrier of the Alps. An image that has become legendary through the centuries, Hannibal dares the unthinkable. At the head of tens of thousands of men, he embarks on one of history's most spectacular and perilous feats, the crossing of the Alps, advancing through snow and stone atop war elephants. Once he reached northern Italy, Hannibal moved straight into open confrontation with the might of Rome. Facing the Roman legions head-on, he unleashed a string of spectacular victories, dealing Rome a series of crushing defeats, most notably at the Trebia River and Lake Trasimene. At the forefront of his army, war elephants thundered forward, their sheer presence terrifying Roman cavalry and shattering enemy lines. Despite catastrophic losses, the Romans held their ground. Refusing any thought of surrender, Rome drew upon its last remaining reserves, summoning every ounce of strength to carry on the fight. Then comes the decisive clash. At Cannae, one of the most famous battles of antiquity unfolds. For Hannibal, it is an absolute masterstroke. Through a tactical maneuver of unprecedented boldness, the Carthaginian forces encircle the enemy and deliver a defeat to the Roman legions that is as spectacular as it is devastating. The cautious strategy of Fabius Maximus, later known as the Delayer, was built on restraint. Rather than launching a counterattack, he allowed Hannibal's forces to advance, fully aware that the Carthaginian army lacked the means to sustain a prolonged siege of a city like Rome. Even so, anxiety gripped the Roman Senate, fear echoed through the streets in a chilling refrain. Hannibal ante portas. Hannibal is at the gates. Rome then turned the tide. The Romans chose to strike where it would hurt the most, by landing in Carthaginian Africa itself. This bold maneuver forced Hannibal to abandon Italy and return home to defend his native land. But the balance had shifted. Having learned how to counter the terrifying war elephants, the Romans finally defeated Hannibal at the Battle of Zama. Defeated, isolated, and now persona non grata in Carthage, Hannibal Barca had no choice but exile. Hunted relentlessly by Roman influence, he left his homeland behind and began a forced journey across the ancient world. His long wandering eventually led him to Bithynia, on the eastern fringes of the Mediterranean world, along the shores of the Black Sea. The Romans eventually tracked him down in Bithynia and demanded his surrender. For the Roman Senate, there could be no peace as long as Hannibal still lived. Refusing the humiliation of capture, the Carthaginian general chose his own fate. He carried a ring filled with poison, a final symbol of freedom. In one last act of defiance against Rome, he swallowed it, denying his enemies the victory of taking him alive. 40 years after the death of Hannibal, Rome finally settled its score with its oldest rival. Deemed a permanent strategic and economic threat, Carthage was utterly destroyed by the Romans, erased from the map in a final act of domination.